I'm a COVID nurse. When I try to share my experiences, I'm often at a loss. It's not simple, my journey through this pandemic. I feel filled to the brim with stories. It's a rabbit hole to depths I'm not even sure of myself. But I want to share today what I feel is my legacy as a COVID nurse. Our floor isn't the ICU, so we often get the patients coming in that they're not in bad shape at first. So we get to know them. We know how many dogs they have, where their granddaughter's trying to go to college. We get to know them at a personal level. They may not feel good, but we know them well enough to know that they have a full life waiting for them outside the hospital doors. And I can only watch in shock as COVID overtook some of them within weeks. My patient, who was able to tell me all about his dog 2 weeks ago, is now strapped up to the BiPAP machine. I take it off for a sip of water, and it sounds like a wind tunnel coming off their face. They sip. I watch in horror as their oxygen drops in seconds and their face turns blue. I strap it back on as the air blows so hard in their face I can barely clasp it. I can't imagine that much air at that force blowing into me. The machine is basically breathing for them. It's loud and uncomfortable and exhausting. I feel barbaric putting it on their face. And where they can't talk, they can't hear the TV, they can't really text, it's in the way. And you have to keep in mind that they're alone through all this. There's no family that's been there to see them. Their life has gone from feeling kind of like they have the flu to this. I can't even leave the door open to their room because of the isolation. Walking to the room and seeing someone in this state is something I can't find words for. As soon as I would come in, I began quickly going to their side and grabbing their hand, pulling it up to me, basically hugging their arm. And that's kind of just what I did. Every time I walk in, just go straight to them, and because it was so awful to see them going through. It was a comfort for us both. I grabbed that hand and saw we were facing the beast together. I fought for them in whatever ways I possibly could. I made a silent promise to them as I took their hand that I wouldn't ever turn away. We would face it together. We would stay hand in hand facing their death if that's what came. The call light would sound more and more often. I would rush in to see the fear growing in their eyes, the panic on their face. But I would also see their hand reaching out for me and waiting. And I would scoop it up and do whatever I possibly could. And I would stay, and I would hold on to them as long as my time would allow. And I would pray and I'd beg for miracles while I tightly clasped their hand. We'd call family when we could, but by this point, they're too exhausted, using all they've got, fighting for every breath and every moment. I talked to the families often, updating them with facts, letting them know I was doing everything I could. But sometimes I'd wish I could talk to them after a patient passed or after I sent them to the ICU. I want them to know they faced that darkness with strangers with more dignity than I knew existed. I want to tell them your dad would wink at me when I came in up until the bitter end to offer me comfort as he faced the unthinkable. But I don't know if it's my place or if that would be upsetting, so it stays with me. Those outstretched hands felt like our lifeline to one another. A few patients would give me a funny look the first time I'd grab their hand, but it didn't last long, and I don't know who was grounded or comforted more. At the end of a shift, we give report to the next nurse, and there were many days that we'd be biting back tears, giving updates we didn't want to hear or say. And then I started noticing them telling me, he reaches out when you walk in and likes to hold your hand. And I realized that's probably because of me. That's my legacy in this nightmare. I work with amazing nurses who were more than happy to hold hands and even pass it on and report. It circled back to me to give my heart a tiny bit of peace. I have no doubt that they are creating their own small legacies as well. Together, we are putting as much light as we can into this darkness. My little legacy hit me one day when I heard a song on the radio. I cried and I smiled. I could feel them with me, my heroes, our patients that never gave up, that showed me what real bravery looked like. So this is a look into one corner of my journey. There are so many other things, there's so much more. I feel broken and empty more than I want to admit. This story is not about one patient, it's about several. I remember a quote though, "We are all broken, that's how the light gets in." And I wait and I hope for light to fill the broken spaces.